I think all authors dream of having their work adapted. I know that when I was writing Shadow and Bone, there was this little tiny voice in the back of my mind that couldn't help but say, what if we someday got to make this into a movie or a television show? I'm Leigh Bardugo, author of Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows series.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Han, the author of the To All the Boys book series. We are friends.
I'm not sure I know when we first met, do you?
I do know when we first met. I like to host writing retreats, and so I like to rent a nice house and then invite other writers to come join me. There is always a hot tub, there are always cocktails. We came 2014 maybe.
And I was actually there when Jenny was working on the trilogy, and my name is in one of the books because I contributed. So Jeff Bardugo is named after me.
That is right.
I don't read a lot of contemporary YA, but I had read Jenny's books and really fallen in love with them because they're not just about romance. There's all this wonderful world building and this real beauty and aesthetic and this deep idea of family that I connected with. I mean, you've been so generous and wise through this process. Sort of from moment one, I've relied very heavily on your advice, and I've been very grateful for it.
For me, the gift of To All the Boys was thinking about down the road, and hopefully with it being successful, that it would be a little easier for others.
So I don't think there's one way that a book becomes a show or a movie. We went to our first meeting with Netflix, and one of the executives there said, we care about the stories of young people and we take them seriously. And that really struck me.
My experience was really different than Leigh's. So we had already made the whole movie and then sold it to Netflix. So Netflix didn't come on board until after.
I think that's part of why it's such a difficult process. The road is varied in length and difficulty depending on the project. Then we brought Eric Heiserer on, and really from the first time he and I sat down, he had such enthusiasm and respect for not just the material, but the fans of the material, that I thought, okay, we're gonna roll the dice. I think we found the right partners.
The idea of collaboration, I think, is the filmmakers have their vision of this story, and then I have my vision, and then there's the book. I want to support the best version of this while still trying to protect what I think the fans care about.
Even though I'm the author, I'm just one voice in the room. And it didn't always mean getting my way. And sometimes that was frustrating, but sometimes something even better came out of the process of challenge. And I think that's what successful collaboration is. People will always have the books to go back to, but the show is something that I believe maintained the heart of the books, but that offered something completely new to people who love these stories and love these characters. There is a confrontation between Kaz and the Darkling that is very brief. It's sort of the Superman versus Batman question of the fandom, and I'll be curious to see how readers react to that particular moment.
Hello, my name is Sam. I have a YouTube channel called Thoughts on Tomes where I discuss books, and the thing that I'm most excited about regarding the Shadow and Bone Netflix adaptation is honestly all of it. This is my favorite series, and I never thought I was going to see it adapted. So Leigh, my big question for you is, what scene from the books, whether it's been adapted yet or not, is the scene you most wanted to see adapted?
Hi, Sam. I knew it was you as soon as they mentioned the name. But the scene where Alina first encounters the stag physically, and this moment where she understands that the stag has been calling to her all along, and that this is a particular moment in her journey that she didn't know she was waiting for either, it really hit me in the heart, and I just sobbed through that.
One thing I loved for Always and Forever, Lara Jean, was in the books, she talks about going to Korea for, I think it was spring break, with her family, and it's off the page. We don't actually see it happen, but in the movie we got to go, and that was really special for me as a Korean American to go back to Korea and bring my family.
Hi, my name is Cindy from the YouTube channel with Cindy, where I post content related to books, movies, and movies based on books. I was wondering, what are the ways that the relationships between your characters have changed or evolved for these adaptations?
Hey, Cindy, I know you. You're hilarious. There were a couple of things that I do think shifted. One of the great gifts that the show gave me was, instead of just being in Alina's head, we get to see a wider view of the world, both in terms of the Darkling or General Kerrigan. And I think for me, what was important was Mal's journey and what it meant to be expendable and a grunt in this army that didn't seem to care if he lived or died. And so getting to see his journey with his friends and what he was going through while we see what happens with Alina at the Little Palace, I think is a much more powerful way to experience that relationship. But I think also for me, one thing I realized was that the actors themselves changed the character.
Yes, I think that's so true. I think that Noah brought his own flavor to Peter. From book to film, Peter might be a little bit softer in the movie than he is in the book.
You see it, he has a very expressive face, and you see it in his eyes that he gives a damn. They bring their own experiences, their own kind of energy and physicality to these characters. And so they become human and alive in a very different way. And I think do become, in some ways, different characters than they ever were in the books. I have to think that the success of To All the Boys with an Asian woman in the lead had to be one of the reasons why it was so easy for us to make the casting choice with Alina.
I was really excited because, they decided they wanted to make Alina mixed race, and Mal as well. They wanted the two orphans to have grown up, with more adversity. I loved the way they took the source material and made it into, something a bit more diverse. I mean, it was diverse anyway, but having, for me, I would have loved to have a mixed race sort of character to look up to when I was growing up.
I'm not sure that everybody would have been as welcoming and on board if you hadn't already proved that this was a valuable way to show a love story and an adventure.
I've been hearing that from a lot of people, just not even just authors, but people who went in to pitch a movie and they were pitching it with an Asian lead, and they were able to point to All the Boys. The meat and potatoes of YA is our fan base is young women. That is who we write for. That's who shows up. So they want to see themselves, and they want great stories where they are the hero. So you had your Jennifer Lawrence, your Kristen Stewart, Emma Watson. And so for Lana, I said, I want you to be Lara Jean, and then I want you to be able to keep getting parts. I don't want this to just be the one thing that you got to do and be the star of. People's imagination about what an all-American girl can look like has been very limited until recently.
I remember very clearly seeing Amita's tape, and when she came on the screen, she was so beautiful and she truly looked like she'd stepped out of Kevin Wada's art of Inej. With casting Alina, I have to say too, I think Jessie is so extraordinary. I love that you described it as a lack of imagination. That imagination has clearly broadened as people embraced her. I remember arriving the first day on set, and I don't think I understood the scale of what was happening. It was like a small city. All of these sound stages, they had built sand skiffs. There was an entire Grecian encampment. There were streets you could wander down in Ketterdam. I actually found it frightening.
I felt stunned. It was almost like the Sausage Factory moment where you're like, this is how it gets made, huh? Lee, did you get to decide what your cameo was going to be?
No, not at all. I told Eric I wanted to die horribly. I wanted to be stabbed or murdered by a Volcra. And really it happened to be sort of whatever they were shooting when I was on set. When I was writing that book, it was a very dark time in my life. I didn't know what my path was going to be. I didn't know what the future held. But I remember writing that scene and thinking about the choreography of it and how the Grisha would enter the room and the colors they would be wearing. And to then be in that moment was pretty powerful. Your cameo, you look so elegant and whereas I look like such a goof because I'm a terrible actress. I just have this huge grin on my face.
I have way more admiration for actors after doing my little like cameos, because on the third film they had me doing some dialogue and then it got cut. But I was nervous. No, I was like, please, I don't need to be doing dialogue. And I was like looking at the playback and I was like, we don't need to, we don't need to do all that. Let's just be in and out, in and out. There I am. Goodbye. You know, when you have a movie on Netflix, the reach is like huge. It's really like incomprehensible to think about how many people are seeing that. I think as an author, you can feel very like vulnerable and kind of naked, because the book reading audience is minuscule compared to how many millions of people will see it on Netflix. When you open it up, suddenly it's like a lot of people who don't know you and who don't know the books kind of weighing in on it. And I think, Lee, we've talked about this before. I think you have to be really protective over yourself and your creativity.
I always say scared artists make bad art. And I think the idea of a writer trying to please everyone or trying to please the most people is not, that's not the way I want to live or create or write. That's not what I'm in it for. I want fandom to be a positive place for people and a place that they can come and feel kinship if their world at home or at school is not treating them well. So it would break my heart to see people be unkind to each other within the Grishaverse.
Yeah, you gain things and you also lose things. And that's just how it goes. And there's so much to be gained from having, you know, such a bigger audience and for people to hear your stories, because you write stories so people can hear your stories. And that's the greatest privilege.
A lot of the discourse around YA is very much, you know, why do people like it? Why do people want it? And there's a desire to dismiss it and to demean it. But the fact is the market decides. People are hungry for something, then the market rises up to meet it. And people were hungry for a particular kind of romance. They were hungry for a particular kind of story and adventure. And that's what YA is. It's answering that call for people who want to see themselves as heroes, who want magic. Why should magic and adventure and romance only go to one kind of person? Yeah, I'm very grateful to you, Jenny, and I'm very grateful. And I'm grateful for the fact that we have this opportunity to make content that and movies and tell stories that maybe reach people in a totally different way. I think there's something different about getting to watch it in your home and to share it with your friends, particularly after this year of being disconnected and not feeling community and connection. That's something that stories can do for us even in a dark time like this.